Hello everyone, I'm Mary Larkin Buchanan and welcome to the first ever episode of Woman Done Dirty in Greek Mythology. Today I'm going to be sharing my personal favorite Greek and Roman myth, Persephone Hades. Before we begin, I would like to give a content warning. There is a lot of mentioning of kidnap, assault, rape, and sexual assault, also sex. I also want to clarify that there are many different variations to this myth, and myths in general, so if this is not the story you learned, that is why. Let's begin. For some context, Hades, the god of the underworld and wealth, has fallen madly in love with Persephone. Persephone, the beautiful goddess of spring, flowers, and pretty princesses. However, Persephone also happens to be daughter of the king of the gods, Zeus, and her lame mother Demeter, goddess of agriculture and corn or whatever. I'm joking. Demeter is an absolute girl boss, and really a controlling mother, but nevertheless she is very powerful and an underrated goddess. Anyways, Hades has fallen in love with Persephone and decides that he is going to marry her. Of course, he never asked Persephone, but why would he need to? Hades doesn't ask Persephone, but he does ask Zeus for permission to marry her. Zeus approves of this proposal, in air quotations, because it's not really a proposal, more of a demand. Mind you, he doesn't tell Demeter, because Demeter is vastly protective over Persephone. Anyways, Persephone is currently picking flowers and being pretty with a ton of nymphs, while Persephone strays away from the rest of the nymphs, and she looks up and she sees the most enchanting flower ever. It's a narcissus. And Persephone runs over to pick up this flower, and as she's picking it up, who pops out? You guessed it, Hades! This lonesome old and dark man managed to learn the most innocent, childlike, kind-hearted goddess he could find. Not creepy at all. For the record, I would like to make a little side note and add that Hades is probably one of the best Greek gods, if not the best, if that concept even exists. I mean, it's kind of a well-known fact that all Greek gods are bad people. For the most part, Hades is just like a lonely dude minding his own business in the underworld. He just happened to get the short end of the stick when picking territory. But he also gets a lot of hate from the other gods for like no reason at all. I mean, obviously there are some exceptions. For the most part, my point still stands. Anyways, Hades leaps out of the ground in his black chariot pulled by 4 horses, and he rapes and kidnaps Persephone. There are many variations to this myth. Some say that Persephone went willingly, some say that he just kidnapped her, but the general consensus is that Persephone went into the underworld against her will. Honestly, anyone who says otherwise is probably just trying to paint Hades in a better light so they can justify simping for him. Well, Persephone cries out one last time as she is dragged into the underworld. Demeter hears this cry, but it is too late to save her daughter, and no one is there to witness the kidnapping, except for one being, and we'll get to that later. Of course, Persephone's absence doesn't go unnoticed. Obviously, Demeter notices that her precious daughter is not by her side, and Demeter decides to search everywhere on Earth for her daughter, but to no one's surprise, she doesn't find her. As Demeter searches for her daughter, she's consumed in grief, and she begins to ignore her earthly duty. Being the goddess of grain and agriculture, all the plants wither and die without her. Meanwhile, in the underworld, Hades is professing his love for Persephone. He's actually kind of treating her decently. I mean, obviously, besides the fact that he's keeping her from her home and her family and her friends and her mother and her flowers, which is kind of the whole point of her existence. But honestly, other than that, Persephone is treated like a queen. While Persephone may be treated like a queen, Demeter is not. And she basically goes around the whole world, which at this point in history, the whole world is a very limited plane of land. But she goes in search of her beloved daughter, and she does other weird stuff, like sticking children in fires and whatnot. But eventually, Demeter asks around to see if anyone has seen her daughter. She finds Helios, the sun titan. She asks if he has seen her daughter, and he immediately tells Demeter everything. Helios is the sun titan, is always in the sky, so it makes sense that he witnesses and sees everything. Anyways, Demeter is pissed off, and she goes to Sky Daddy Zeus and is going off at him. In an attempt to please her and calm her down, Zeus sends Hermes, the messenger god, to retrieve her from Hades. I know it's been a while since we checked back in on our 2 lovebirds, but while Hades has Persephone in the underworld, he's trying to get her to eat. If he eats any food in the underworld, she has to stay there. I don't know why this is a thing. The underworld is weird. Of course, this does not work, and the gods don't need to eat, so Persephone is just really hungry, but like all things considered, she's fine. However, one day Persephone is in the garden in the underworld and is offered a pomegranate by the gardener. Instead of declining, Persephone stupidly accepts, because I guess she can't die of hunger, but at some point it must get unbearable. But after she eats some of said pomegranate, Hermes immediately appears to bring her back to her mother. Terrible timing, by the way. And Persephone is brought before Zeus, who states that she can come back to her home, had she not eaten anything. Hades, suddenly, appears in the shadows with the half-eaten pomegranate in his hand, and Zeus asks Persephone, "You dumb wench, how many pomegranate seeds have you eaten?" To which he replied, 6. He then rules that Persephone will spend 6 months of the year with her mother tending to the fields or whatever that corn people do, and the next 6 with her husband in the underworld ruling dead people. And while Persephone is away, Demeter goes back to the sullen state and everything goes to hell. Pun intended. But the good news is, now we have seasons, I guess. Yay? Basically, Persephone is a victim and everyone in her life, mother included, did her dirty.